In an age that prizes constant communication, compulsive sharing, and performative transparency, we've lost sight of one of the most potent tools in human interaction: strategic silence. While the masses rush to declare their intentions, broadcast their thoughts, and unveil their plans, the truly effective individual understands the power of restraint and wields silence like a weapon. Niccolò Machiavelli, the 16th century Florentine thinker, grasped this better than most. Though known for the explicit counsel of the prince, some of his sharpest insights lie in what he left unsaid. The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, he observed, understanding that speech constructs illusions while silence shields reality. In a culture addicted to exposure, those who master the art of strategic silence do more than safeguard their position. They attain a level of influence that compulsive communicators never reach. They succeed while others are still talking about success. That's the hidden cost of unnecessary speech. Machiavelli lived in a world of political intrigue, where a careless word could lead to exile or death. Today the stakes may be lower, but the consequences of excessive speech remain. Where silence preserves strength, unnecessary talk reveals it. Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, Machiavelli observed. For everyone can see, but few can feel. In other words, the one who speaks constantly invites others to see and judge, while revealing little of what truly matters. Every word carries a price that silence never demands. First, speech creates commitment. When you declare your intentions, you lock yourself into a path in the eyes of others. Change direction, and you risk appearing weak, inconsistent, or dishonest. But if you remain silent, you retain the freedom to pivot without explanation, without apology. Second, speech exposes your thinking. The more you explain, the more you unveil your mental framework, information others can exploit to predict, manipulate, or oppose you. As Machiavelli said, the intelligence of a ruler can be judged by the quality of those around him. Likewise, a person's strategic depth can be gauged by how much they needlessly disclose. Third, and perhaps most important, compulsive speech erodes mystique. It drains authority. It is far safer to be feared than loved, Machiavelli famously wrote. Fear requires distance, and distance requires mystery. The leader who over-explains justifies every move, and shares every thought becomes common, predictable, powerless, and the ordinary can never command the respect reserved for the extraordinary. This truth plays out clearly in modern life. The colleague who speaks in every meeting, offering opinions on every topic, whether qualified or not, gradually dilutes their influence. The friend who overshares every detail of their life on social media ceases to be intriguing and becomes predictable. The negotiator who rushes to fill silence with concessions forfeits their leverage, and the leader who answers every criticism not only elevates their detractors, but also erodes their own authority. Machiavelli would likely see today's obsession with radical transparency and non-stop communication not as a sign of authenticity, but as strategic malpractice, a voluntary surrender of power. It's a lopsided trade, offering others information while gaining nothing in return. To reclaim that power, one must master the three forms of strategic silence. Machiavellian silence is not merely the absence of speech, it's a calculated communicative strategy, adapted to different objectives. Recognizing its distinct forms reveals how silence can function as an instrument of power. The first type is information-gathering silence. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Machiavelli wrote, "The fool speaks first, exposing their position while learning nothing. The wise remain silent, drawing others out, allowing them to reveal their thoughts, intentions, and weaknesses. This creates an asymmetry. Others disclose, while you observe. In negotiations, it's the classic rule. The one who speaks first loses. In relationships, the best listeners often understand the unspoken dynamics better than those who dominate the conversation. In competitive settings, those who publicize their strategies before acting often fall short, not because their ideas lack merit, but because premature exposure dulls their edge. The second type is authority-building silence. Machiavelli knew That power is rooted not just in action, but in perception, and perception is shaped by restraint. A prince must imitate both the lion and the fox, he advised, for the lion cannot defend himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. The cunning of the fox lies in knowing when speech weakens authority instead of strengthening it. Calculated silence creates mystique. It signals discipline, self-possession, and depth. Those who speak sparingly are often assumed to know more and to wield more than they reveal. Would you like me to continue with the third type of silence next? Authority-building silence is effective because human psychology abhors a vacuum. People instinctively fill gaps in communication with their own assumptions, and those assumptions often benefit the silent party. When a leader speaks sparingly, addressing only matters of real importance, their words gain gravity. When someone responds to criticism, only when it truly matters, not reactively or defensively, they project confidence, not insecurity. This is why the most powerful individuals in any field tend to speak less, but with far more intention than those below them. The nervous junior executive over-explains. The CEO speaks briefly and decisively. The insecure feel the need to justify. The self-assured state their position, without apology. The anxious leader responds to every provocation. The confident, sometimes the most powerful statement, is the one you never make. The confident leader speaks only when it serves a strategic purpose. Curious how to use silence as a source of power? Subscribe now to learn more. The third form is ambiguity-preserving silence. It is safer to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both, Machiavelli famously wrote. But this insight applies beyond fear and love. It extends to any situation where preserving multiple interpretations is more useful than offering a single clear stance. Ambiguity, preserving silence, invites others to project their own hopes, fears, and expectations onto your position. By withholding clarification, you allow yourself to appeal to multiple audiences, even those with conflicting views. You retain flexibility by avoiding premature commitments, and you maintain plausible deniability by never explicitly endorsing a particular interpretation. Politicians master this technique, crafting statements vague enough to be interpreted differently by different groups. Skilled negotiators use it to avoid locking into positions that might limit options later. Effective leaders rely on it when expressing vision, leaving room for maneuver in execution. This isn't deception, it's strategic restraint. Premature. Clarity can often limit options, alienate allies, or weaken your hand. Machiavelli, ever pragmatic, reminded us, politics have no relation to morals. In his world, and ours, preserving ambiguity can be the difference between control and compromise, the psychological power of silence. Beyond tactics, Machiavellian silence wields a deeper psychological force, one that speech, however clever, cannot replicate. Understanding the psychological effects of silence reveals why it often succeeds where persuasion fails. First, silence creates projection spaces. The human mind dislikes ambiguity. Faced with a void, people instinctively fill it with their own hopes, fears, or assumptions. When you stay silent at the right moment, others begin revealing themselves. They expose their position while you preserve yours. Machiavelli understood this tendency well. Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs, he wrote, that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. But strategic silence exploits this same vulnerability without the need for active deceit. It's why expert interrogators rely on silence more than questioning. The pressure of the pause compels subjects to speak, often revealing more than they intended. The same principle applies in negotiation. The party who can endure silence holds the upper hand, while the one who nervously fills the gap often gives away too much. Second, silence establishes dominance in communication. Those who speak first speak often or speak at length often signal, consciously or not, that they are seeking approval. In contrast, those who speak less speak later or only after others have committed subtly assert a different role, not that of the supplicant, but of the judge. Machiavelli would recognize this dynamic as a form of power rooted in restraint. "It is better to be feared than loved," he observed, "not because fear is inherently preferable, but because love can invite familiarity, while fear sustains distance and respect. The silent party may not be adored, but their silence often commands a gravity that eagerness cannot. This principle explains why job candidates who ask thoughtful questions are often more impressive than those who oversell themselves. Why the quiet voice in a meeting, when it finally speaks, draws more attention than those who dominate the room. Why in conflict, a composed silence can carry more authority than a heated rebuttal. In each case, silence inverts the typical power dynamic, shifting the speaker from one who seeks validation to one who sets the terms of engagement. Third, silence cultivates mystique, and mystique magnifies perceived power. Machiavelli noted that men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for all can see, but few can touch. What cannot be fully seen or understood often appears more powerful than what is laid bare. Those who reveal everything, their reasoning, their doubts, their intentions, render themselves ordinary. But those who speak sparingly and reveal selectively preserve an air of mystery that amplifies their perceived competence and control. In leadership, this plays out clearly. A leader who explains every detail of their thinking demystifies their authority and invites comparison. But a leader who shares only the conclusion, while keeping the deliberation concealed, preserves an aura that reinforces their position. This isn't manipulation. It's a recognition that leadership partly relies on others perceiving you as capable of more than they fully grasp. The dangerous allure of transparency. Modern culture often elevates transparency as an unquestionable virtue and views silence with suspicion. We're told to be authentic, speak your truth, and communicate openly. While well-meaning, this advice runs counter to Machiavelli's enduring insights about power, influence, and strategic restraint. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present, Machiavelli wrote, acknowledging a hard truth. Binding yourself to past declarations can become a liability when circumstances shift. Yet this is exactly what modern transparency demands. Public, self-disclosure that constrains your future options in the name of present authenticity. This is not a call for dishonesty. Machiavelli's philosophy was never rooted in lies, but in calculated disclosure, sharing only what serves your purpose and withholding what doesn't. As he famously advised, never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. In a world obsessed with telling all, the true strategist remains discerning. They know that silence, ambiguity, and selective speech often achieve what brutal honesty never could. Modern translation, win with silence, not excessive disclosure. In today's terms, Machiavelli's maxim might read, never try to win through unnecessary disclosure what could be won through strategic silence. The transparency trap plays out across many domains. In professional settings, it shows up as the urge to share unfinished work before it's ready, to speak prematurely in meetings, or to reveal negotiation strategies before understanding the other side's needs. In personal life, it appears as oversharing, confessing things too soon, disclosing plans still in flux, or revealing vulnerabilities before trust is established. To Machiavelli, these aren't acts of authenticity, they're strategic missteps, voluntary, losses that give away leverage without gaining anything in return. The overly transparent individual becomes predictable, easy to influence, and ultimately ordinary. And ordinariness erodes authority. This stands in sharp contrast to modern norms that confuse verbosity with value, or self-disclosure with sincerity. The Machiavellian communicator plays a different game. They speak to achieve outcomes, not to express every feeling. They remain silent not out of fear, but from discipline. They withhold not to deceive, but to protect their freedom of movement. Practical application. The discipline of silence. How do we apply Machiavelli's silence in a modern world built on constant communication? It doesn't mean becoming mute. It means speaking with purpose and withholding when silence serves you better. Practice information asymmetry. Before offering your position on any important issue, make it your priority to understand others. First, ask more questions. Listen more closely. Pay attention not just to what is said, but to what isn't. As Machiavelli advised, the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The fox's cunning begins with observation, not disclosure. This approach is critical in negotiations, where uncovering the other party's hidden priorities is often more powerful than staking your own claim too early. It's just as useful in the workplace. Knowing your colleagues' concerns before committing to a stance allows you to navigate politics, avoid conflict, and influence more effectively. Cultivate strategic ambiguity. Not all clarity is helpful. When specificity would tie your hands too soon, ambiguity preserves your room to maneuver. This doesn't mean being evasive. It means choosing precision only when it serves your outcome. As Machiavelli put it, a prince should be slow to believe and slow to act and should never show fear. That slowness is not hesitation, it's calculation. It's the power of holding back until action serves strategy, not impulse. The strategic power of silence. Lessons from Machiavelli. Machiavelli advised restraint in committing too quickly. This deliberate hesitation protects one's freedom of action. In leadership, it might look like clearly defining vision and goals while keeping the methods of execution flexible. In personal relationships, it could mean expressing shared intentions while allowing room for evolving paths. In competitive scenarios, it means holding back your strategy while others reveal theirs. The power of silence. Learning to be comfortable with silence is a potent tool. Most people find silence in conversation awkward and feel the need to fill it, often revealing more than they should or making premature concessions. If you train yourself to stay silent in these moments, you gain a distinct advantage. In negotiations, this means stating your position and then letting silence do the work, rather than weakening your stance with nervous elaboration. In conflict, it shows up as listening fully to criticism before responding, instead of reacting defensively. In leadership, it appears in delivering decisions without over-explaining, trusting the decision to speak for itself. Speaking strategically, Machiavelli's approach to silence doesn't suggest never speaking. Instead, it champions speaking only when words serve your goals more effectively than silence. The master of this method doesn't remain entirely secretive, but creates deliberate contrast between what is revealed and what is withheld. As Machiavelli observed, the vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world is made up mostly of the vulgar. In a world where many overshare, those who practice selective disclosure stand out. Their words carry more weight because they are used with intention. Their decisions draw more attention because of their calculated reveal. Their influence grows because it is exercised with precision. A rare discipline. This strategy demands a discipline that is increasingly rare today: the patience to listen before speaking, the self-control to withhold when disclosure might feel gratifying, and the situational awareness to know when silence is more powerful than speech. These traits don't develop easily in a culture driven by constant expression, but that's exactly why they're so effective.